Well, hello everybody. Today we are here to talk about rabbit food, rabbit feeding, how we feed, what we feed. And hopefully this video will address a lot of your questions. If you're new to rabbits, if you're thinking about getting rabbits, or if you have rabbits, and maybe you're just trying to change things up a little bit, this video is definitely for you. Before I go any further, I do want to add some disclaimers. What I'm going to share with you in this video is what works for us. We are not experts, but we do have several rabbits, actually a lot, and also we have been raising now for a little over a year, specifically try different things on what to feed them, how to feed them, and when to feed them. And these are the things that really seem to work and not work. And so hopefully this will save you a lot of time and maybe even save a few rabbits' lives if it is that dire of a situation. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in this video is what we feed them. So what we feed them really depends on certain factors. Lots of factors, actually. First factor being age, but also what are we doing with them? Are they a breeder? Or are they going to be processed for meat? It really has a lot to do with that. Some of the younger breeding pairs that we have, are not quite up to maturity quite yet, so we would feed them a little differently. So I'm going to start with the young ones. If you have babies, if you have kits that are younger than mature, but also older than, they would be getting milk from mama, we feed them straight pellets. So if you have this litter of rabbits that you are saying, these are going to be processed out, we're going to be putting them in the freezer, then we feed them straight pellets. They will get hay on occasion if they have some belly issues. And I'll say right now, right off the bat, if you have a rabbit at any age that is having belly issues or any kind of bloat or any kind of distress, you want to just separate them out and cut them down to only hay, which I'm going to talk about hay in a few minutes, but only hay. So that's just a note if you have that problem. Back to this litter that you have that you're only going to be raising for meat. Again, pellets. We do, and I talked about this in a previous video, we do give them diatomaceous earth as well on a regular basis to ensure that they're not having any kind of worm problems or any kind of parasite issues. It really helps. It's not foolproof, but I believe that it helps a lot because we've never had an issue. So moving up the ladder to the does and the bucks that we're going to be keeping for breeders that are not quite mature enough yet to breed. We really only do this if the bloodline has been killed off. And I don't necessarily mean, but I mean like if we have gotten rid of them, and there have been some breeders that we've just gotten rid of. So if that is the case, if the mom and dad are not on the property, then we do often consider them, the best ones of the litter to be our breeding pair to come up and breed with our current stock. This is something that I'll talk more about in the breeding section, but just so you understand the background of why we do this. If we have them and they're like 12 weeks to, I would really say 12 weeks to 6 months, so it's about a 3-month window there, they get a variety of different things. They will get pellets more than the ones that are mature, but they will also get hay. Tonight I actually fed them hay. So hay, pellets, and they will also get vegetables. There's lots of different vegetables you can give them. I would say my staples are squash, cucumber, zucchini, and not really a vegetable, but kinda a tomato. A lot of these things people are going to tell you, oh, you shouldn't feed them nightshades. I will tell you I've never had a problem doing it. And I fed them quite a bit of tomatoes. Again, at your own risk, but at this age, I start them out. And the process really just accelerates when they get to maturity. So for the mature ones, it's a little different. If you have a doe that is not with any kits, if she's still with kits, she's pretty much just getting pellets. So if you have this doe that's mature, that is, on her own in her own cage, she's recovered. We usually give her about a week of solid pellets after she's, been separated from her kits. So if you're outside of that week and now she's just back to breeding stock, and then of course your bucks, they get vegetables. So I give them lots of different vegetables. up to and including nightshades. I know that there are probably some people out there that say, well, it harmed my rabbit. And, I'm saying again, for us, this has been successful. It doesn't bother them at all. Eggplants as well. They seem to really like that kind of stuff. I will say they do get a little finicky around zucchini. I have a couple that love zucchini. I also have a couple that don't really want to eat it. So you have to kind of play around with that. You will have some rabbits that just don't like certain things. And there's really no rhyme or reason to it. I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with the actual breed of them. I can't tell you. I don't know. But I do know there are some rabbits that just don't like certain things. And so it's important to learn that about them and respect that. Because what will happen if you don't is you could make that rabbit sick. So if the rabbit is not eating because you're not feeding it what it needs for whatever reason, then it could be a malnutrition issue, and then you can have all kinds of health problems. So you really want to take note of that. You really want to take note of how they're acting. Are they a little lethargic? Are they skinny? Are they sluggish? All these kind of things need to be taken into account. I do give them vegetables. As I said, a lot of the vegetables I get from different places around here that are beyond human consumption. They're just overripe. They're just not fit for humans in one way or the other. And so they go to the rabbits. Another thing that we give them, and this is something that I highly, highly recommend if you are one of those folks who has endured the pain that is the rising price of feed, and that includes rabbit food, more, I would almost say more so than other things too, because it's expensive. It was rising on a regular basis. I mean, these bags used to be $18.99. They are now $25.99. If you are one of those people who that's really hurting you, there's a lot of things around that you could feed them. So I do feed them vegetables, as I said. I also give them leaves. They love maple leaves. Seems like really above everything else. They really like maple leaves. Doesn't matter if they're green, doesn't matter if they're brown, they like them. Also, mimosa trees. So they love mimosa. If you have access to mimosa, they love it. And the wood is really soft. So what I do is I cut like a decent sized branch and kind of break it up and just put it in their crate. They eat a lot of the wood and all because it is so soft. That is basically how we feed them and what we feed them based on their ages. If they are young, if you have litters, we have a litter of 10 right now. So that's a pretty big litter. They're in a very big cage, a big dog cage, big enough for a German Shepherd. So they're in a very big cage. They actually get about 6 to 7 cups of food a day. And this leads into something else that I'll talk about in a minute as far as free feeding versus controlled feeding. For your kits, for your young ones, like your really young ones, which again you're going to be processing, there is a question of how much and how often. So some people will just fill a J feeder up to the top and let them eat as much as they want. That you can do, but there's some risks to that. So one risk is mold. And I don't know about where you are, but right now here in New Jersey, it's very, very humid. There's really no way to stop mold from happening in there. And if mold happens in there and your rabbit eats it, you're going to have a problem. Also, it can gum up in there and actually prevent the food from getting down into the actual part where the rabbit can eat it. It kind of, at that bend, it just kind of just cakes. And so I had that happen the other day, actually, and I had to take a screwdriver and clean out all the old food. So you do need to keep an eye on those J feeders. I'm not a fan of them. What I actually prefer is just stainless steel or aluminum. I wouldn't use regular steel, but I just wouldn't use it long term. But stainless steel or aluminum cake pans. That's really what we use a lot of here is stainless steel and aluminum cake pans. Take them out. You can wash them. They're good to go. You can clean them. And not only that, but they are pretty durable. And actually, another thing, you get them a lot of yard sales. You can get them for cheap. You don't have to buy that, $15 one from Tractor Supply. No. You don't have to do that. It can be very, very simple. The problem with these is, of course, they do get dirty, and also sometimes they'll tip them. That is why we do not free feed. So I do not give them, an infinite amount of food and let them eat what they want. No. I actually basically give them a cup ratio per day. It depends on how many are in the cage that I'm feeding, But and it also depends on the ages, but really I give them about a half to a quarter cup a day per rabbit, give or take. It depends. Right now they're just not eating a lot because it's so hot. That also plays a role, but I go out there, I'll feed them about that ratio, and I'll go out there and there's still food in there. So you don't want to waste any food. Again, it's very expensive, so you don't want to waste anything, but you want to make sure they're eating enough. So there has to be a balance there. But that's a balance that as you feed them and as you learn their habits, you can actually really kind of learn. It just takes a little bit of patience, and it takes a little bit of note taking so that you know who's knocking it over, where you can put it in a cage so they won't knock it over. Right? This is all about saving food and being as efficient as possible. I know some people say they need more, some people say less, some people say they should be constantly fed. I mean, it really is a decision that you need to make. And again, these rabbits are not starving, they're not hungry. A lot of times I go out and there's still food in there. So if you do see that they're skinny, or if you see that they're really like fighting over food beyond the normal, like, I'm the dominant one in the group and so I should eat first, beyond that, but if it's like they're starving, feed them more. Sometimes that does happen as well. For those that I'm feeding straight pellets, and I know I said straight pellets, but we do supplement sometimes with some oats as well as sunflower seeds. I just wanted to say that. And a little bit of something different for them so they're not eating all pellets all the time. Again, that's a preference, and that's just something that we do to help offset feed costs. One other note on the pellets that I just want to say is we used to get a organic variety of pellets, and it was so expensive. And as of late, I tried to order it about a month ago, and guess what? They didn't even have it. So it's very expensive and it's not available. But when that had happened, like I said, about a month ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago now, I went to a local feed store and they actually had Calmback, I think is how you pronounce it. Those pellets seemed to work. A lot of people in some different Facebook groups for rabbits had said that was actually a really good brand. No problems, no diarrhea that I've noticed. Everything's fine. They seem to really like it. And so that's really what we've been using for the last 4 to 6 weeks or so. So those are just some things to kind of think about, like when you're feeding your rabbit, what to feed your rabbit. There is a lot of variations to this. I would say the biggest one that I didn't mention is lettuce. Yes, I give the rabbits lettuce. Now, some people say, oh, it's toxic. I've never had a rabbit get even sick at all. Again, user results may vary, but for us, at this present time, I've never had that cause any issues. They actually really like it. They like cabbage as well. We also have them running across the grass in the dog cages, so they're eating grass on a regular basis. And keep in mind, hay is really just dry grass. So, they're getting that on a regular basis, 90% of them. So I do say they're getting pellets, straight pellets, as I said, but there is some variation to that. But just in small quantities. Most of their diet, if they're going to be processed, is still pellets. We talked about what to feed them, but we haven't talked about what not to feed them. There is several things that are no-nos, lots of things actually, that rabbits should not eat. One thing not to feed them is cedar. Cedar is not a good idea. It is not good for rabbits. That is a no-no. Now, I will say this, and this is something that we just experienced last week. We had been told, and actually really through a lot of the research Gingerhead did, if they can't eat it, they won't eat it. So in other words, if they run across something that's toxic to them, especially the mature ones, they won't eat it. So we have this variety of berry out in our yard, and it grows everywhere. It's invasive. And the chickens like it, but we have seen that it is not good for rabbits. No. Well, the big crate of 10 is on the ground, and I had moved it over top of one of these that I didn't notice because we run them in overgrown areas. They're kind of like our personal weed whackers. It was buried in the high grass, and I didn't see it. So I went out and moved the crate the next day, and guess what? They didn't eat it. Like, it was still there. They knew not to eat it, even though they could have. And these are not mature rabbits. These rabbits are they're about ready to be processed. I would say they're about 12 weeks old. So they knew enough not to eat it. Does this mean you intentionally want to feed them things they shouldn't eat? Of course not. But if you make a mistake and give them something they shouldn't have, is probably not the end of the world, just as long as they've got something else available to eat. There is a little bit of flexibility with this, but you don't want to be intentional about it. What I did was a honest mistake. So there's lots of different things you can feed your rabbit. I would encourage you to explore what to feed them. Every little bit counts when it comes to feed, and it is very important that they're getting enough, but also it's very important they're not breaking your bank, right? You want to do this as economically as possible, especially if you are using them as a regular meat source, because obviously you want to get the cost per pound as cheap as possible while doing it safely and humanely for the rabbit. I'll be honest, I didn't know where to put this next part of the video, so I wanted to put it here because I think it's probably the closest thing. Back in the winter, we had an issue with waterers. Like, you know, the waterers were freezing and we had to bring them inside, let them thaw, and, you know, switching them out. We don't have a permanent system here because of the move, so it's kind of just, you know, we're taking it as we go. And so we were running them in and out, you know, bringing them in the morning, taking new ones out at night, and switching them. That got expensive because that meant we had to have 2 sets of waterers at all times. I did some research and I found that they sell these nipples just like you would get at the ones if you bought the waterer from Tractor Supply or PetSmart or wherever, and they fit pretty much any bottle, a 2-liter bottle, a 1-liter bottle, a 16-ounce bottle, whatever. And guess what? They're like $5 or $6 as opposed to like 13 or 15 for a decent sized water. And guess what? You can use any size bottle. I've used some of these 2-liter bottles. You know, wash them out good, of course, but I've used 2-liter bottles. That's what we use on a lot of them, is 2-liter bottles. If your bottle cracks, no big deal. You just go get another bottle, put it on there, and it really is at no cost to you. So I found that little hack, and it really has worked. We've done that for months now. No problem. To be honest, the bottles last a long time. And you're saying, yeah, but if you just buy the nipple, you also don't get the little hanger. So I'm going to show you guys here what I did. This is just part of the chicken run. And I just took some clippers and clipped a little, you know, I took a length of it to, you know, kind of guess how long it would need to be to fit around one of these bottles, depending on what size I'm using. Cut the little top of the fence there, bent it around, put little, you know, form little hooks on it, and boom, you have an instant water hanger that really costs you nothing. As opposed to paying, again, $15 or so for one of these, it really is costing you nothing. So I had this idea, and we do this a lot. It works. Important thing is just to cut it to size. You don't want it too big or too small. So, you know, kind of cut it, bend it into place, and, you know, make adjustments as you need to. But it is a very, very cheap, efficient way for making waterers. You can make a water for like $6 as opposed to 15. I could be here all night talking to you about different waterers, different feeders, different things to feed them, not to feed them, how to feed them, when to feed them. You know, I go out once in the morning and I go out once at night. Main feedings are at night, but twice a day, just to also check on them and make sure everything's okay. You could go out 3 times a day. You can go out 5 times a day. You can feed them little cups at a time. There's all different kinds of things that you could do. But I hope that this video helped you, and I hope that you will share your rabbit story down below in the comments. We look forward to hearing from you. And it's been fun, guys. God bless you all, and stay tuned for the next iteration of this Rabbit 101 series, which is going to be on breeding and how we do it, when we do it. Also, some of our best practices that we use as far as breeding our rabbits and what will give you the best meat. We will talk about that next one, guys. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you for watching.